Good morning, everyone. My name is Greg Loper. I'm the chair of the Maricopa County Board of Adjustment. Would like to welcome you to this morning's meeting of the Maricopa County Board of Adjustment. I'll turn it over to Rosalie to do a roll call attendance.
Chairman Loper.
Present.
Vice Chair Prasan. Member Cardin. Member Schwartz.
Here.
Member Ward.
Here.
Chairman, we have a quorum.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to roll through the announcements.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
before we begin, I would just like to introduce Nicholas Decker. He's a senior deputy county attorney in our office. Nick has been tasked with being my backup and shadow so that eventually I guess they're figuring I'm going to die. Nick will be in a position to take over. So Nick will probably be attending most of the meetings with me so he can get the flavor of it. And I just wanted to introduce him to the board.
Very, very good. Welcome aboard, Nick. Glad to have you with us. We now have two people we can ignore their advice to. So
Thank you. Nice to meet all of you.
there you go. You'll find that there's some truth in what I just said, sadly, but we do try to do it right. Anyway, moving on with the announcements. One, this meeting has been noticed in accordance with the open meeting laws of ARS 38-431. Agendas are available within 24 hours of each meeting in the Maricopa County Planning and Development Office, and also available online at the Planning and Development website 1 week prior to the hearing at www.maricopa.gov/planning. With respect to the hearing process, cases will be considered in the order they appear on the agenda unless otherwise agreed to by the board. For each case, the applicant will be given a set amount of time to present their testimony. Any witness wishing to give testimony in a particular case shall notify the board of such interest. This shall be done by registering desire to comment as noted on the published agenda. Also, at the appropriate time for each case, the chair will ask those attending online who wish to speak to a case to raise their hand by clicking on that icon on the webinar screen. Staff will provide the chair with the names of persons who have registered and noted a desire to comment, and those registered participants who have raised their hand. The chair will call on each named participant one at a time. Such testimony shall be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. However, the actual amount of time allowed to testify shall be at the discretion of the board chair. The chair will conduct the virtual public hearing according to the bylaws and according to the rules established by the chair regarding public comment. Votes will be done by roll call vote only, and the chair will verbally announce or verbally identify the specific members of the board for all motions and seconds. Moving on to the minutes. Has everyone had a chance to look at the minutes for the February 17th, 2022 hearing? Are there any comments? Oh. Sorry. Seeing none, those minutes are considered approved. Move on to the consent agenda. We have, I believe, 3 items on the consent agenda. Turn it over to Mr. Gerard for the presentation on those.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, board members, the 3 items are BA 2022-003, known as the Hild property in District 3. It's a request for variances to the south front yard setback and hillside disturbance outside the lot's principal building envelope for a 1-acre property at 40415 North 10th Street. There are no noted violations on the property, no known opposition. The findings in paragraph 20 are that it meets the statutory test for approval, and we offer conditions A through B. Second item is BA 2021-022, known as the Danielson property in District 3. It's a variance for hillside disturbance outside the principal building envelope for a 2.5-acre property east of the intersection of Black Canyon Highway and 38th Lane in the New River area. There's no noted violations on the property, no known opposition. In paragraph 20, you'll see the findings are that it meets the statutory test for approval, and we offer conditions A and B. And then finally, on the last consent item is BA 2022-009, known as the PCG Residential LLC property in District 2. These are variances to the south front setback and north rear setback for a approximately 4,500 square foot property at 9728 East Birchwood Avenue in the East Mesa area. There are no noted violations. There's no known opposition. The findings in paragraph 19 are that it meets the statutory test for approval, and we offer condition A. And that concludes my presentation on the consent items. I'm happy to try and answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Darren or other staff at this time? All right, seeing none, is there anyone that's registered to speak? And if so, or if you wish to, feel free to raise your hand. Press the icon. David, Alicia, are we aware of anybody that's registered to speak?
Not for the consent agenda. And no hands are raised.
No hands are raised. All right, then we'll go ahead and I'll entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda as presented.
I make a motion to approve those items on the consent agenda as they meet the requirements of the special use permit. That's I botched that. Hey, Darren, stop laughing at me.
We have a motion for approval of the consent agenda
Thank you.
by member Schwartz. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second by member Ward. Rosalie, would you please take a roll call vote?
Member Schwartz,
Aye.
Member Ward,
Yes.
Chairman Loper.
Yes.
Chairman, that's an approval of the consent agenda by a vote of 3-0.
Thank you. We'll move on to the regular agenda. And Darren, I screwed up. I think what you were trying to tell me was the first item of the regular agenda. So I'll just turn it over to staff for presentation of the regular agenda. Please provide the case number for us so that at least I can stay on track here. I'm lost.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The case number is TU 2022008 and case TU 2022008 is for Palms Estate LLC. It's in the Supervisor District 2, and the site is generally located on the southeast corner of Montgomery Road and 136th Street in the Scottsdale area. The site is approximately 1 acre and it's zoned RU43. The applicant is requesting a temporary use permit per Maricopa County Zoning Ordinance Article 1302.2.2 for it's a special event TUP for a 3-day seminar. According to the applicant, the request would accomplish the following. Approval of the TUP would allow for a 3-day seminar to occur on the site between April 15th through the 17th from 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. The site will be occupied at the time by up to 10 staff and 30 guests, with no guests staying overnight. And there are no food concessions being offered, no overnight camping, alcohol and the like. It's specifically for just the 3-day seminar between those hours stated. Staff has received 6 letters of opposition from 5 individuals. The opposition centers on concerns that the site is being used for temporary rentals and that the activity on the site generates excessive noise. It should be noted that there are no violation cases present for the property and that vacation rentals are not restricted by the Maricopa County Zoning Ordinance. Staff also reached out to the some of the people that noted excessive noise in their complaint and informed them of the code enforcement process and invited them to submit complaints, and so that the county could initiate the investigation process for these code violations. But so far there's no history of previous code violations on the site. The staff findings are that the request meets the statutory test for variance approval. The applicant has satisfied the requirements of the MCZO Article 1302.2.2 regarding temporary events. There are no proposed temporary structures, no outdoor amplified music. All parking is to remain on the site and will be monitored by a parking attendant. I also received confirmation from the City of Scottsdale that they don't require any additional permits from Scottsdale. And for the reasons outlined in the report, staff recommends approval of TU 2022008. And at this time, I would be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Great presentation. Are there any questions of Mr. Castaneda? Yes, Member Schwartz.
Yes, Jose, can you tell me, is the owner having a seminar there, or is he renting it out to somebody that's going to have a seminar?
I believe he's renting it out for
owner
someone
occupied.
that's going to host a seminar. I'm not sure if he occupies the site. Judging by the complaints that I received and the conversations that I had with the opposition, the site is being used as an Airbnb officially. And in my conversations with the opposition, I noted that the MCCO does not discuss basically the temporary rental of a single family residence. However, we do regulate temporary events such as these, and so that's really what the what this case is about.
So tell me this, is the owner here to make a presentation?
Yes, I did let them know to register, and they did confirm that they received the meeting link.
Okay, but you don't know if they're here to speak.
I don't know.
Glenn
Okay.
Myers is registered to speak.
Okay, all right, great. Go ahead. I'll just let you answer my question. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yes, sir.
With all due respect, Member Schwartz, that would be an improper consideration to make a zoning decision, whether it's being done by them or someone else on their behalf has nothing to do with zoning. But I will tell you, if it's rented out as an Airbnb, one of the requirements to qualify as an Airbnb is you don't live there. So that will answer your question
Yes, thank you.
without you asking what would otherwise be an improper question. How was that?
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Member Schwartz? Member Ward?
Can you please tell me, Mr. Castaneda, how much of this is parking within the picture? Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Member Ward. The applicant has noted that they will provide that parking area to the north of the site, and then according to the applicant in the narrative, they're instructing the attendees to carpool to the site should additional parking space be necessary. The parking attendant that is going to oversee this event will then place the vehicles on the east side of the property in the to the east of the pool. That there's the open area on the other half of the site.
Can you also, thank you for that. Can you zoom out again? How close are the closest properties? So it looks like there's blanks, there's empty lots, except for heading east, correct?
Yes, that is correct, Member Ward.
Okay, thank you.
Member Schwartz, you have another question?
Yes, Jose and maybe Darren, can you explain to me, without me trying to read this over again, why it does not meet, why in your opinion, it doesn't meet the statutory requirements?
Yes, Member Schwartz, the variant or the
Actually, you're
temporary use
approving.
permit. Yes, the request meets the requirements of the MCZO. However, when opposition is received for a temporary use application, it has to be agendized for the Board of Adjustment, and otherwise it would have been an administrative approval.
Got it. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, to clarify for all the board, this is not a variance application, Member Schwartz. So that test is inapplicable here. This is a different authority that the Board of Supervisors has given when there is objection to a TUP.
Yeah, and thank you for that. I appreciate that, because that was what I was looking at, and I'm like, well, this is for a temporary use permit. That's why I got tongue twisted with my last approval. And so could you tell us what the test is here? Remind us of the test so that we make sure that we're adjudicating this properly.
Well, Darren probably is the best one to address that, because most TUPs are handled administratively. The exception is if somebody objects, it comes before you. So I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, that that's a question that Darren probably is best qualified to answer.
Darren, if you would, please, if you're available.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question, please?
What are the, this is in front of us simply because there was opposition to it. But otherwise, what are kind of the benchmarks, if you will, of approval or denial of a temporary use permit? Or are there any?
Well, Mr. Chairman, members Schwartz and member Ward, each case is simply judged on its own merits. Usually we'll look at compatibility with the neighborhood with the understanding that special events, what will the impact be, and is it offset by the community benefit and that sort of thing.
All right. Any further questions of Darren or Jose or anyone else? All right, go ahead and open the public hearing. Is the applicant on the call and wishing to present their case? We have a Glenn Myers.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much. My name is Glenn Andrew
Provide your
Myers.
name. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi, my name is Glenn Andrew Myers. I'm the owner of this property, and the special event for which we're seeking a permit is an event run by a dentist named Dr. Nguyen Nguyen. And to answer your prior question, yes, he will be renting the property. Dr. Nguyen and his team will be conducting a seminar for up to 30 people. The attendees are dentists who are learning how to perform root canal surgery. Everything will be indoors. The attendees will be leaving at 5:30 to their hotels. There will be no outdoor music, no amplified sound, and I believe no disturbance to the community. I want to touch on some of the complaints I have on my short-term rental. I've made several improvements over the past 9 months to impact my rental on the community. I require a minimum age of 30 to rent. I don't allow events without a permit. I don't allow outdoor music at any time. I have noise sensors to monitor my guests. And I have a local property manager who is on call and can assess and interact when necessary. And since November of last year, I believe I've made big improvements in the quality of our guests and minimized the noise impact of the community. And that is all. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. Are there any questions at this point of the applicant? Member Ward.
Mr. Myers, what's the most people you've had on your property?
14. And that would be 12 overnight plus 2 during the day.
Okay, so this 30 during the day will be your biggest event to date.
I'm sorry, you broke up. Did you say 14?
No, so this upcoming event with up to 30 will be your
yes.
biggest event to date?
Yes, it will be.
Okay, thank you.
While the applicant's still here, Greg, I just want to ask a question of staff. What's the threshold for needing a temporary special use permit to hold a seminar? Is there a number of people, or is it just if you're going to hold a seminar in a residential area, you have to have a
Yes,
permit?
thank you for the question, Member Schwartz. So it's not necessarily the number of the people that will be attending, but the time that they'll be attending. The event can't exceed, I believe it's 30 days. Otherwise, something like an SUP for an event center may be appropriate. This is more for a specified time window for a specific event on a certain site. So to answer your question, there's not necessarily a amount of people, and it's more of the amount of time that that triggers this.
This is Darren, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Member Schwartz. Just to add on, I think what you were getting at is what is the trigger? What is the threshold where a temporary use permit is required? And that is any public event. If there are advertisements, if there's a commercial transaction, if there's a subscription or an entrance fee or anything along those lines, we would not consider this a private invitation only party. Like if someone had a party at their house and they invited scores of people, that might be a public nuisance, but it's not necessarily a zoning concern. But the commercial public assembly type activity where it's advertised for people to subscribe or pay an entrance fee, that makes this something other than residential activity, and that triggers either a special use permit or proper zoning entitlement. I'm sorry, a temporary use permit or proper zoning entitlement.
And if I could add in prior to you being on the board, Jeff, we've had wedding venues, we've had roping arenas and equestrian events and things that we asked very similar question on what can we trigger, and it truly is a case-by-case basis. So, Member Ward, do you have a question?
I do. Is there a fire marshal recommendation for private residences?
Member Ward, I'm not sure as to what the fire marshal recommendation is and occupancy requirements. That's not something that
There are this is Darren, Mr. Chairman, Member Ward. So during construction permitting, there are the county has no fire code for non-public buildings, but the fire district's fire marshal will have construction permitting requirements. When we have a commercial venue, we'll route that to the appropriate fire district. The special events for a temporary use permit are not, just because of the limited nature.
While I understand that, everything else looks in line. You know, I'm sitting here thinking that I have had that many people, like you said, at a private event without thinking twice about it. But so that would be my only concern is exits and entrances in case of an emergency. And it seems like if we're being tasked not to determine land use, but we're bringing into it noise and everything else. It seems like accident mediation should be kind of a part of our decision making.
Member Ward, I agree, and then there have been uses that we look at the noise for it if it escapes the property. This is an internal use, and like you said, I've been to events and had events at my house where it's been in excess of 30 people, probably in excess of the time and hour days and stuff that this operation is having. So it's not a perfect world in this, but anyway, it's certainly a question we could ask of the applicant. Are you doing anything for above and beyond just your normal to address emergency services? And I'm asking this of the applicant, Mr. Myers.
I guess the short answer is no. I haven't done anything. You know, I know my property, and I don't think it's an issue. There's emergency vehicles can park on 136 pretty easily. I have lots of egress exits on my property, so it's not something I'm worried about.
Okay. All right, any more questions of the applicant at this time? All right, thank you very much. Stay tuned. We maybe come back to you. This is a public hearing, as I already opened it. I understand there is someone who wishes to speak in opposition. Mr. Dodman, are you online and available?
Yes, I'm on the line. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. If you could go ahead and provide your name and your presentation of why you're opposed. And also,
okay,
the question
thank you.
I always have is, where do you live in relation to the property?
Okay, my name is William Dodman. I'm speaking in opposition. I live immediately south of the property, about 100 yards on 136th Street. I have two concerns I'd like to speak to. The first regards this educational seminar in general. Usually such activities take place in event or conference centers. We've previously discussed, or it's been mentioned, that the property is owned by a corporation operated as a short-term vacation rental, which is all allowable. But I'm concerned that this temporary use permit is really an attempt by this corporation to expand its business footprint by operating another business from the property. I'm not familiar with all the nuances of the zoning ordinances. After reading through the ordinances for the property and for property use and for home occupation business, I'm left with the opinion that a for-profit corporation operating a 30-guest event or conference center out of a single-family dwelling doesn't meet the intent of the ordinances, even on a temporary basis. My second point, just regarding noise, this is open desert. It's very quiet. Sound travels great distances. When a dozen people are on the deck of the subject property and talking, we can hear them 100 yards away. We can hear what they're saying. When they really get talking loudly, we can hear them in the house. And this isn't partying or anything. This is just a group of people talking together. I don't think this temporary use permit brings any benefit to the neighborhood, and I think in all likelihood it's just going to cause additional stress to the neighbors. Therefore, I'm in opposition to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of the speaker? All right, seeing none. Is there anyone else identified who wishes to speak on this item? Anybody who's raised their hand?
We have Brian Wood here as well. And he is unmuted.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, provide your name and your presentation, please. And let us know where you live in relation to the subject property.
Brian Wood, here with my wife, Linda Manning, as well. We are directly east of the property. So we're the closest property. So
Okay.
kind of to touch on some of Bill's points as well. I mean, yeah, the sound travels really well out here. I mean, normal conversations you can hear at the property, and then when the guests take it to a different level and they get the party going, it gets very loud and very annoying, and it's been an issue with this house. And my biggest concern about this, again, I kind of agree with everything that Bill said, but mainly for us, it's going to be that the parking. Our bedroom is right in that lower left of our house there, so the southwest corner. So basically, anything that happens in that backyard of that house, it sounds like it's happening in our bedroom. So all of those cars showing up, car doors opening and slamming the doors. You know, the event's supposed to start at 7:30, so they're probably going to show up at 7 or earlier. I mean, that's going to be a lot of noise in the morning, and you know, it's a really nice time of year. We'll have the windows open, you know, before it gets 100 degrees, and we have to have air conditioning on 24/7. So, you know, windows will be open in the morning. Not to mention, my wife and I both worked for the companies that, you know, back in Minnesota, before we moved here. So we still work on, you know, Central Time, and my wife actually works on East Coast Time. So we're up very early during the week as it is. So then once the weekend comes, we'd like to, you know, relax and sleep in a little bit and not be woken up by all this traffic at 7 o'clock in the morning. Not to mention, most cases, it's hard to keep even 6 people over on that property quiet. I don't know how we're going to keep, you know, 30, 40 guests, even though they're not going to be outside all day. Anything else?
Understood. Are there any questions of the speaker? Jose or Darren, could you briefly talk about the stipulations being placed on this particular one? The stipulation 13D, or just D, if you could read that and then also explain what that means.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Loper. This would be Stipulation D. Prior to zoning clearance approval, developers and/or builders shall establish fire emergency protection services covering all real property contained within the project area during the course of construction, and shall obtain a will serve letter substantiating coverage from the appropriate fire district, department, or company servicing the site. I believe this is due if there is new construction. Sometimes, like the fireworks stands that for seasonal sales, those often require it when they're either moving in buildings. They are required to have some kind of something in place for fire protection services. I don't believe that this site specifically would be required to establish to get a will serve letter. The applicant noted the fire service provider for the area, and their plan for an emergency was essentially to call the established service providers to the site if there was one.
Right. My apologies, I had the wrong letter. I meant the one that talks about the restrictions on the dates of the operation as well as the time, and that the requirement that they can't set up too soon or they have to take things down too late. And I'll just summarize it for those. So the temporary use permit, if approved, is for April 15th, 16th, and 17th only, from 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. If they change those, they have to let staff know at least 2 weeks in advance. The temporary use permit would expire on April 18th. If it's approved, the temporary use permit letter must be visibly displayed at the front of the property. And this would be for the neighbors to view. And then I thought I saw something else. So there's a different stipulation that talks about they can't put up any structures prior to the 72 hours before the start, and they have to remove them within 72 hours of the end of the event. These are different stipulations of approval. I don't know if the two speakers in opposition, if this helps them or if they were aware of it or not, but I wanted to make them aware of it.
Chairman Loper, I have a question of staff.
Yes, Member Schwartz.
So in the event, Darren, that the applicant does not comply with the stipulations, what is the corrective measures? Like, what is the process you have to go through? Since it's such a short window of time, it's a 3-day period.
Well, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Schwartz, non-compliance with stipulations of your approval is a zoning violation, and it could be enforced as a zoning violation. You know, if it's a one-time event and it's over, quite likely it would just be a warning, you know, but it could be grounds for staff not to recommend approval of future event. If it was a verified violation, it could be carried to a hearing officer even after the fact, and there could be fines imposed. But the maximum fine for an individual for a one-day event would be $750.
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, if the speaker who indicated this was a corporation is correct, then the maximum fine could be $10,000.
Correct.
Member Ward, you had a question?
I do. Did the CCRs name this as a single family home?
We don't regulate CC&Rs.
But what changes buying a home, purchasing a home in a neighborhood? How does it become a conference center?
Well, if this is Darren, if I could clarify, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Ward, if this was a conference center, they need zoning for a conference center. This should be a one-time weekend event, special event where people are, you know, if this is something more than that, they need some type of zoning entitlement.
But at what point? Because the owner said that his other rentals have been 14 people at a time. Now he's just more than doubled that to 30 for a 3-day event. That's a conference.
Well, staff is not involved with Airbnb rentals or lease durations or anything like that. If they are having something other than people, if there's something other than residency of the site, you know, if they're having these special events, they need zoning entitlement for that. And that's what this is for 2 days. It could have as many as 30 days within a 6-month period. That, of course, would be weighed differently by staff and by the board. But if anything beyond that is going to require at least some type of special use for a large assemblage of persons or commercial zoning, it, of course, would be an inappropriate site for commercial zoning.
So does this, I'm sorry, Darren, but does this, are you saying that if this property came before us again for a similar situation, that we would address it? Or are we looking at this one request as being, it's only 3 days or 2 days? Does that make sense?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Member Ward, my understanding is this request is just for the weekend. That's all.
Right, but what, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but at what point will we say enough or make a decision for this property owner to come back? Because apparently if it wasn't for the neighbor's request or the neighbor's argument, this property owner can continue to do this forever, right? Renting it out 3 days at a time for 30 people to show up.
Mr. Chairman, Member Ward, maybe I'm not following. We are not going to be involved with leasing of the property, Airbnb operations at all, unless they start having these commercial venues, these public assemblies where they're advertising. Airbnb is rented to a single party, a single entity. It's not rented to multiple persons. And so, but the party they rent to has to be for residential purposes. It can't be for commercial purposes. That's why, because this doctor who's giving a lecture is inviting people, you know, you can pay and come and attend this event. That triggers the need for this special event. So the request before you is that having a special event is going to last for 1 weekend. It could have been an event for up to 30 different days within a 6-month period. We would view that differently, probably. Once they come in for another request like this, it starts looking like it doesn't meet the purpose statement of the zoning ordinance for temporary uses, which is, I'll read it to you, Article 1302.1.1. Provisions of this article are based on the recognition of building structures and uses, which because of their unique characteristics should not be permitted on a permanent or long-term basis, but may be either necessary or desirable for a limited period of time. What this means is there's going to be a retreat in a beautiful desert setting for a maximum of, let's say, 50 people. They're going to have it on a 5-acre property that's surrounded by, a sparse residential area. That may be appropriate for a weekend, but would that be appropriate daily, 10 to 6 every day? And so that's what we're talking about by a special temporary event.
And Member Ward, if I could chime in a couple of things. One is we're restricted by statute somewhat in what we can do with short-term rentals. Number two, the temporary use permit stuff, as Darren talked about, we've had applications for wedding chapels where they would have 2 days on a weekend over multiple weeks to equal 30 days. We've had temporary use permits for roping events, different things. So it's a broad category. You're right, we don't normally hear it unless there is opposition, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't go unnoticed. We've had ones I think the wedding chapel one I'm thinking of from a few years ago actually got referred to us by staff because staff was recommending against the issuance of the temporary use permit because they were beginning to do a true commercial center or a true commercial long-term use. I, for one, don't see a lot of difference in this between this and if you bring a bunch of people over to discuss your investment strategy, or if you would, a huge Thanksgiving 4-day party with you and all your family or family reunion, or would you have people camping outside, things like that. Unfortunately, if you view it a certain way, the only way, if you know this particular event at this particular time causes issues, is after the fact. And should they want to do something else, they're hearing us, so they're aware that it's being monitored. But should they come again, we'd be able to go back and say, either your previous one was successful or it was unsuccessful. Like a lot of things in life, you don't always know till after the fact. I personally don't have an issue with it, but I just wanted to point those couple of things out. Member Schwartz.
Yes, Darren and Jose, do you know if they're going to be bringing in equipment, dental equipment, to actually show a procedure while they're there to actually do the root canal procedure on site?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Loper, Member Schwartz. I will defer to the applicant on this one. I'm not familiar if there's going to be physical equipment brought in and actual practicing of the procedure. If the applicant is still with us.
Yes, Member Schwartz, I'm sorry, but I don't have the answer to that either. I don't know if they're bringing in equipment or if it's all just going to be presentation style.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Thank you. I just want to clarify a couple of things. One, the fact that this is owned by a corporation is irrelevant. So keep that in mind. However, what's also irrelevant is anything to do with short-term rentals. Short-term rentals, which, like people will say, pass me a Kleenex, we refer to as Airbnbs. That's only for where you rent it to one individual who takes the entire property for a residential purpose. This is not. So that's why it's before you. So for instance, Member Ward's question about fire, that's the kind of thing that you have to consider You have to consider this in total. Is this the right place for what they want to do at this event? But just don't get hung up on the Airbnb idea, because this doesn't fall under that. If he were just doing it for a residential purpose and they wanted to have 100 people over for a party at night, that's something that happens in residences. So that's something we would not be involved with. But because it's not a residential use, that's how it got to you. I think Darren said that. But then for the chairman to say we don't regulate Airbnbs, I just want you to understand it's different, it's separate.
Thank you for the clarification. Member Schwartz, you have a question of the applicant?
No, I just was going to make some comments. The public hearing is closed now, correct?
No, it has not been closed. That's why I was asking if it's a question of the applicant or the speaker.
No. I just have an opinion. I will wait till you close the public.
Is there anyone else in the public that wishes to speak? There's raised their hand. Sounds like that answer is no. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing.
Yeah.
Turn it over to the board for questions and our comments. Member Schwartz, go ahead.
Yes. Well, this is my district, so I've spent a lot of time out in this neck of the woods, and I think irrespective of it's in my district or not, that I think that I would opine the same way in anybody's district. That I don't think that you're comparing apples and oranges by saying I'm having a wedding at a house or I'm having 30 of my friends over to discuss an investment strategy. I think this is clearly you're having a commercial activity that's not typically done in a residential home. It's done in a doctor's office or in a meeting center. And so I'm not in favor of approval of this case. So I'll be voting no. So I just wanted to let everybody know what my personal opinion is, and so that's all I have to say.
All right, Member Schwartz. Any other questions or comments from members of the board at this time? Member Ward.
I agree with Member Schwartz. This is probably an amazing money-saving way for a conference, but I don't believe that you can take a home and turn it into a conference center, and I just see us opening up a can of worms if we allow this to happen.
Thank you. With that said, I'm ready to entertain a motion. Member Schwartz, it's in your district.
Yes, I'd make a motion for denial of case TU 2022008.
We have a motion for denial from Member Schwartz. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second by Member Ward. Rosalie, would you please process a roll call vote?
Member Schwartz,
No. I mean, I'm saying no, that I'm agreeing with the motion.
That's a yes then.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that, because I'm off today. But thank you. Yes.
Member Ward,
Yes to the motion to deny the application.
thank you. Chairman Loper,
Yes.
Chairman, that's a denial by a vote of 3-0.
All right. Hopefully it gives you sufficient time to come up with options. We'll move on. That's our last item on the agenda that I'm aware of. And are there any matters from staff that we need to discuss?
Would it be okay for Member Schwartz to make a motion that you get on the rowing machine by a date certain?
I think I'm at that point where it could require additional equipment to take me out of my house in a medical emergency. So I'll just leave that.
What was the one thing I told you? Start slowly.
Yes.
10 minutes at 1, you can set the dial for tension. Start at 1. Don't be a hero, Greg.
No, I will start out light and I'll be letting you know how it goes.
Okay. Good luck.
If you find that the rowing machine does not stand up tall enough for the hangers, I do have an elliptical right here that you're welcome to.
There, I know. One of the most common things turned in at thrift stores is exercise equipment. So, been there, done that.
I'm glad
All
to
right.
know I'm in a majority.
There you go. All right, if there's nothing else, then we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting. I do want to note, thank you, Darren, for putting us up there, Jose or whoever, Rachel.
Yes.
That starting in April, there'll be a hybrid of in attendance or the go-to webinar. I do plan to be in attendance, but it's nice to know there's an option for those times that I physically can't be there, but still want to participate.
And Greg, that would also allow the public to attend in person or online.
Right. That's good to know, and that good note to the public as well. All
Do
right.
our
Go
Will our
ahead.
parking passes still work?
They will. If you have a county ID badge, they have been kept updated, presumably every 6 months. But but a lot of the new members and planning commissioners have never even had a badge because we haven't been down here in 2 years.
Mine has worked, so I'm appreciative of that. All right, everyone, have a great next few weeks, and we will talk to you in April.
Happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody.
Absolutely. I'm not sure if our next meeting is before or after Easter, but happy Easter in any event. Take care. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.